Let's look at the initial setup of the Access server after installation, and we're going to explore some of the available options. As you can see, I'm trying to log into the admin web UI. This is the very first time I want to log in. During the installation, we were presented with the username, which is the default name is OpenVPN, and a temporary password. I'm going to enter those information here, click on sign in. The very first time when you log into the admin UI, you will be presented with the license agreement and you need to agree to this. So we'll click on agree and you will land on this page. Now I have to mention this, that this Access server was installed directly on an Ubuntu machine, so we landed on activation page. Sometimes if you install it on a cloud service such as AWS, on your first login, you will land on the status page, which is this page. It gives you an overview of what's happening on your system. Again, when you land on activation page, you can see that you have 2 VPN connections allowed. That's automatically comes with the Access server. If you need to get more connections, you can just click on Get Activation Key. That's going to take you back to the Access server portal. This is where you can choose the number of connections that you will need, and then you can choose if you want to be billed annually or monthly. Once you're happy with that, then you can purchase your activation. Once done, you'll get an activation key such as this one. We can just copy this, go back to our admin user interface, and paste that key here, and then click on activate. Once this is done, your subscription is activated on this Access server. Now let's go ahead and talk about the host name. Access server allows you to connect to the admin web UI either using a server's host name or its public IP address. Clients and users find it more user-friendly and easier to sign in with the domain name, such as myaccessserver.mynetwork.com or .net or .local, rather than remembering and typing the IP address. So when you first access the admin web UI, you need to use the server public IP address as we did here. Now, if you want to set up the hostname, we just have to expand configuration, go to network settings. Here, this is where we can replace the public IP address with the hostname. Now, keep in mind that if you're using a public domain name, then we need to register that domain name first, and then we also have to add an A record to our DNS server for this hostname. Once we're done this, from now on, then we can use the hostname to access our admin web UI. Now let's look at the VPN settings. If we click on VPN settings under configuration again, under routing, we can see that by default, the Access server utilizes network address translation or NAT to provide access to private subnet. NAT works by mapping multiple private IP addresses within a local network to a single public IP address. This allows VPN clients to connect to private subnets, with the Access server translating each client's virtual IP address through NAT. As a result, the host IP address of the Access server appears as the source address in client's packet destined for that private subnet. Access server also offers a routing feature that requires more complex configurations. When routing is enabled, you can configure access for specific subnets to all VPN clients' IP addresses and subnets. This setup also needs configuring routing tables on your server. Even though NAT is the simplest method for granting access to resources on the same network as the Access server, such as file server or web server, it only supports one-way traffic. This means that OpenVPN clients can access resources on the private network, but the network cannot initiate connections to the clients. So to allow direct communication with connected clients, you can configure the Access server's routing feature. This is very useful if we are configuring some voice over IP protocols within our Access server. Also, while we're on this page, we want to make sure we pay attention to this option, should client internet traffic to be routed through the VPN. This is basically if you want to turn on the split tunnel on or off. So by toggling the switch to yes or no, we can select this option. Once we're happy with everything, we can go click on Save Settings and then Update Running Servers. If we move forward and expand user management under user permissions, we can see that OpenVPN username is here. So remember, we logged in with a temporary password. Best step here is to change that password. Click on More Settings, and here we're going to go ahead, type a password for our OpenVPN account, and then we're going to click on Save Settings, Update Running Server. So this is one of the first steps that we need to complete. So let's go ahead and log out, and we're going to log back in with our new password to make sure everything's working correctly. And here we go. Let's go back to user management and user permissions. By default, Access Server supports local authentication. In this mode, you configure users directly within the admin web UI here under user permissions. So we can add individual users. Let's go ahead, add someone here. We're going to add Kevin, for example. We don't have any groups yet, so we can choose anything yet. As I said, this is a new Access Server. If we want to give admin rights to Kevin, we can select this box. If we want to allow Kevin to do auto login, we can select this box. At any time, if we want to deny access to Kevin, we can come and select deny access. And if we need to delete the account, we can just select delete and then delete the account. But if we click on more settings, this is where we can do a little bit more configurations. We can choose a default authentication method for the users. We can choose the multi-factor authentication again, and then we can set up the password for Kevin. So let's go ahead and set up a password first for Kevin here, and then I'm going to go ahead and save settings and then update running server. So we have created our first user, Kevin. Let's move to group permissions. This is where we can create groups for our Access Server. For example, if I want to create sales team, I can choose sales here again. Click on more settings. We can configure authentication method at the group level. Also, we can set up the multi-factor authentication at the group level here. Once we're happy again, we're going to click on Save Settings and Update Running Server. Now, at any time, if we create a user, we can assign those users to appropriate groups. For example, we're going to change Kevin here from no default group to sales group. So Kevin is part of our sales group now. On the other hand, you can integrate Access Server with the external authentication systems. We can use PAM, Radius, LDAP, SAML. As you can see on the authentication, we have options to configure. For example, if you're using Windows Active Directory, you probably want to configure LDAP. If you're using identity providers such as Entra ID or OneLogin, for example, you can configure SAML. Then if you go back to settings, you can choose your default authentication systems system-wide here. Right now is local, the default, but if you have LDAP or SAML enabled, we can choose those. And as you saw it earlier, you can choose the default authentications per users and per groups as well. So that's one of the nice features of Access Server, that you can have multiple authentication systems set up. Also, if we scroll down here, we can see the multi-factor authentication. We can enable it system-wide here if we need to, or we can just do it at the user level or group level as we saw it earlier. Password lockout policies, we can change these numbers as we see it necessary. Once we're done with everything, again, like everything else, we click on Save Settings and then Update Running Server if we need to. There are a lot of other features available for Access Server. For example, if you expand configuration, you can see cluster. This is where you can set up a cluster of Access Server for load balancing or redundancy. If you go to TLS settings, you can change or configure some of the settings here. Or if you go to a web server, this is where you can assign your digital certificate. This way you don't have to use the self-signed certificate with the Access Server and so on. We have a lot of documentations on our website. You can either access those documentations through the Access Server portal by clicking on the Configure Access Server link, or you can just go to our website, openvpn.net, and look for documentations. So this was a quick video on how to do the initial setup of the Access server after installations and looking at some of the available options. Thank you very much.